What's going on, everybody? This is Quinn, and I'm back with you again with the chess live puzzle solving series on chess.com. Here, we're solving puzzles that are just above the 2000 rating range. And today, we're going to focus on a concept called checking for the opponent's forcing move. So, what I mean by that is after we make a move, we have to check if the opponent has any sort of counter move, any sort of counter attack, any idea to salvage himself out of the position so that we don't get an unexpected reply to our move that causes the move that we chose to actually be incorrect. And we're going to continue working the ideas from last time. So we're going to start by just analyzing the position and framing what we want to get out of the position. So here we're playing with the player with the black pieces, and we have a rook and two bishops. So that's going to be worth a little bit more than a queen combined together. In fact, it's 5 plus 6 equals 11 points of material. We have a pawn. We're down by 2 pawns here. So he's got 2 extra pawns, and he's down 2 points in pieces. So the material is actually going to be completely even. And the question here is, what exactly are we looking for? How do we frame what we can get out of this? Well, we have to look at his king safety. And I would say his king safety is highly jeopardized right now. He's got a very exposed king. There's a couple of moves that we can play to deliver a check, most notably this bishop check right here on f7. And this rook is cutting off a bunch of squares along the fourth rank. And we have another bishop here that's also very active that can jump into the attack. This bishop, because it's on a dark square, can also potentially attack the enemy queen. But we have to watch out for his queen, which is very active. And our king safety is also not the best. So I would give his king safety maybe a 2 out of 10. I would give our king safety a 4 out of 10. I don't think we're going to get checkmated anytime soon, but we do have to watch out for perpetual checks or forks that could win material for our opponent. Right now, our pieces are fairly well defended. We have a pawn that's defending the bishop, and the bishop's defending the rook. And the queen's attack on this d4 bishop is blocked by the d5 bishop, and we're also defending that bishop with our rook. So everything in our position is very well connected. The only thing that kind of sticks out as being removed from the coordination is our king. So with that in mind, I would say that there's a 70 to 80% chance, that's just my initial estimate, that we're looking for a checkmate. And there's a 15% chance that we're looking to win material that's not a checkmate, but potentially winning the enemy queen or picking up a couple of pawns. And there's a 5% chance that it's something else entirely. I don't know what that could even be. I don't know what else would be plausible, but I'm just leaving some space in the back of my mind to allow for that. So with that in mind, let's start looking at the candidate moves. So the first move that comes to mind is just the most forcing move. Remember, we got to look for checks, captures, and threats. The most forcing move here is a check, and it's bishop to f7 check. And we can start to calculate this a little bit. So he's got 2 legal moves in response to this. 3, technically. He could block with the queen, but let's not even look at that because he would just be losing a ton of material. He can block with the pawn here by pushing his pawn to g6, which, in some ways is a good move for him because it allows him to get closer to promotion, and that's something that we have to watch out for as a danger. Or he can move his king to h6. Let's look at the one that's easier to calculate first, the king to h6. So we would just give a check with our rook to h4. I think that would be a good follow-up move. And it looks like he has nowhere to go after that. So this square is cut off by our bishop. This square is cut off by this bishop. All of these squares are cut off by our rook. And this square is currently occupied by his pawn. So that would be a checkmate. So his only move in response to bishop to f7 check is g6. And now he's threatening to take our bishop with a check, g6 to f7 with a check. So he's threatening to win some material there. And that move is kind of hard to counter. I mean, if he does play that, We don't really have a follow-up check. Taking on g6 would just blunder our bishop away. Rook h4 against just losing a piece on the spot. So if we don't have a follow-up check, it's hard to see whether we have a checkmate. And also, it looks like he can just take our bishop with a check on the next move. So we would have to move our bishop out of the way now. And the question is, have we really improved our position at all from having made this move and having his pawn move up by one square? Arguably, it looks like we may not have improved our position. So with that in mind, maybe that's not the best move to start with. So let's look at another candidate move. This one now is less forcing. It's not a check, but it is still a move that creates a threat. So that move would be rook to f2. And the threat that this move makes is on the very next turn, we could play rook to h4 check. And let's just say he skips his turn and we were able to make that move. What would he be able to do? Maybe king to g6. Then we would go bishop to f7 check. And then he can go to g7 or f6. Let's say he goes to g7. Then we could come back with our bishop and give another check on d4. Then here he could block with the pawn. And at that point, he looks pretty safe once again. So I don't see an immediate way to break through. And in addition to that, if we don't skip his first move, he could maybe even start giving some checks to our king. So for example, after bishop to f2, he could go queen to b8 check. We would then have to start to run with our king. Let's say we go to d7. He could go queen to b7 check. And then we can't go to this square because it's covered by the pawn. We can't go to this square either because it's defended. So we would have to kind of run back to the 8th rank, and then he could just continue delivering checks here until we run out of moves. What if we try to go the other way? What if we go to f7? Then he could give a check on c7. And maybe here we can block with the rook. But that kind of defeats the purpose of the move bishop to f2 because the whole idea was that we were going to give a check with our rook over here on h4. So that looks kind of not so good either. And there's another candidate move that we can look at. Let's start to analyze that before we go any deeper in the other variations. And that's bishop to e5. So his queen cannot go in this direction, it cannot go in this direction, it cannot go in this direction, it cannot go in this direction. The only direction it can go is this direction over here. And he can go to g6 or to h6. If he goes to g6, bishop d4, g6, queen g6, we have bishop f7, and that would pin his queen to the king in a very fatal manner, causing him to lose material massively. And if he goes to h6, that move looks a little bit better. And then it's not very clear how we can win material from that. Maybe we, pull our rook back to e3 and threaten to give a check here and skewer the queen after this sequence of moves. But it looks like what can he do? He can go to h7 with his queen. I'm just looking at all of his possible legal moves because he can't even go to h8 because our bishop is still covering that square. This line is becoming more interesting as we look deeper into it. His queen, once it's on h6, can't run to g6, can't go to g7, and it can't go to f8. So it kind of looks like his queen might be kind of stuck here on this square. Uh, Now I'm still very suspicious of this move just because of how many squares his queen has to go to. Um, but if the calculation really comes out to be correct, then the right move is the right move, even if it looks very suspect that it could be the right move. Um, so let's take a look at that again. So let's just say we move our rook, and the other thing is we can move our rook to d6, e3, sorry, e2 or e1, and there's no difference between these moves. I guess he could take his king and go to g4 after a move like rook to e3, and that would free him from that skewer threat. So that would be the downside of that move. Is that it removes the contender of the of the fourth rank. We could give a check with our bishop maybe on f3, and then he would go here and fork our pieces. And oh no, he can't go there because our bishop is on d4, on e5. Maybe he could go to g3, and it's hard to see a continuation there from which we could win material. So that looks pretty solid for him after queen to h6. And then if we move our bishop to, let's say, like g3, he can just start giving checks with his queen once again. And I think we just don't really want to allow that. So that looks pretty good for him in that variation. So coming back to this position once again, maybe there is some truth to bishop to f7. I don't see there being a stronger case for that compared to bishop to f2 or bishop to e5. It seems like all of these moves can be good, and I haven't really ruled out any of them. And so maybe there's like some other move that we haven't considered yet that could be good. After bishop here and we move our rook, let's say to e2, and he goes here, it does free our bishop to be open, especially if we go to e3. This is a line that we've already looked at. Just looking at this check once again. If he goes to king to g3, he doesn't really even care about giving up that discovered check because he doesn't have any pieces on light squares besides pawns. So we could give a discovered check here, and then he could just go back with his king, and then he would be threatening the bishop. So I don't think that would work. We could pull the bishop this way, give a discovered check, and then he can still go back to that square with his king. We could give a discovered check here, but then he would just take it with his king. So that wouldn't work. It just doesn't look like that variation is going anywhere. So let's take a step back. Let's zoom out a little bit and really try to see if there's any other possibilities that we may have like missed or that we just didn't consider. His queen, again, as we've said, is vulnerable on that square, but he has that h6 square to hide away to, and we don't want to release his queen in any way and allow him to start giving checks. Let's see what the move was before. So his mistake was going to h5. Had he gone to a different square, like h3 or g3, then he wouldn't have blundered into this puzzle. So is there something, special about this move in particular that makes it such a bad move? I mean, it gives up the check. It allows a skewer possibility, as we've already looked at. It allows for the potential of like some sort of a checkmating idea on h4 with our rook. All things to be considered. Could there be a combination? So let's say we move the bishop there, and then we give this check, and then we give this check with the bishop, and then he pushes his pawn. Even then, I don't see what the benefit would be. He still has that threat to take our bishop with a check, and we don't have any threats against his queen. Okay, so I'm going to take one more look at this and just make a move at some point once I can, even now I'm just thinking more like probabilistically what's more probable to be correct. Rook, any like other rook moves that could be made? I think we can rule out bishop to f2 because allowing him to start giving a perpetual check would very clearly be a mistake. I don't think we have the tempo to do that. So it's got to be either bishop here or bishop here. I think we can decide on that right now. So can we rule out bishop here? Because this move just has fewer possibilities. He has to play this. Is there any way around this? Honestly, I'm really not seeing it. It just looks like there's no way to break through this particular move. So with that in mind, I think this has to be the correct move now. Let's give it a shot. And it is the correct move. And that was the end of the puzzle. Shockingly, it's just a one-move puzzle. And it's 2150 rated. So let's take a look at the analysis. So he has to go queen h6. That's what we calculated. And what's our follow-up here? Stockfish says rook e2. Yeah, so we have the idea of threatening the skewer, and then, of course, king g4 to get out of that. And then what's the continuation from there? It says rook g2 check. And this move forces him back into the h-file. I see. Okay. So the idea is to create some distance to the king, so that even if he goes king h3, we still have this square covered by the bishop, so that we can continue giving checks and skewer the king. Whereas had we gone to e3, here we can give a check and force him back to the h-file, but we don't have another follow-up check to skewer. Whereas if we go to the second rank, or even the first rank, we have this possibility, and it's all because of our bishop's effect down these diagonals that's preventing his king from moving in this direction. His king has to go back in this direction, and then we get the skewer. So that was the end of that puzzle. A really long video. It took us a long time to find just the one move puzzle, but I think our process of elimination made sense. So there was some uncertainty behind this move, but we looked at all the other possibilities and we just said they can't possibly be correct, so it had to be the remaining possibility. That's another way that you can solve chess puzzles. I'm glad we were able to demonstrate that in this video. And let's just also show why bishop f7 check is wrong. So again, g6, and we have no good reply. We have to just move our bishop back according to the computer. And then now he's rolling the pawns down the board, and his king is no longer as at risk here on h5. So that's the end of that puzzle. I hope you guys have enjoyed the video, and make sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this tomorrow, and shoot me an email in the description below if you would like a free chess book, a course on how to start seeing patterns in chess puzzles more easily. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you tomorrow.